One.
All right.
Hello.
Uh-oh.
Whoa.
Shit.
What the hell happened?
It's like the start of a Nirvana concert right there. What happened?
Did the microphone jack just come out or something?
What
Dave finally blew it out with those
What in the
hellos.
world?
Maybe he
Blow up the
spontaneously
speakers.
combusted.
How about this? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Inside Movies Galore. I'm David Struggy, and tonight we have a variety of hosts and with some surprise guests that we haven't had in a little while. So we're going to hand this over to Jake, I believe it is, who is hosting tonight's movie, and that is The Meg, which came out in 2018.
Whoa, what's going on? The dog whistle.
Unfortunately, the movie is not about a giant Meg Griffin destroying everything.
I'm sure. Whoa.
What in the
I'm pretty sure Dave just got assimilated by the Borg.
I think
I
so.
am not
Dave.
dead.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay.
One of those
Good, Dave.
ill-tempered sea bass.
But can you hear me?
there's
Yes,
no
we
longer
can
a
hear you now.
resistance is futile type situation.
Got him.
So, as
I
mentioned-
am Davidius of the Borg. Resistance is futile. Anyway.
Take away.
But in any case, Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about the film,
Yes.
this that we are going to be talking about tonight, and it is a big one.
It is a big one, a very, very large one, 70 feet in fact. But because IMDb's description sucks, I'm going to see if the one on the back of the Blu-ray works better. When a massive creature attacks a submersible, the crew becomes trapped at the bottom of the Pacific's deepest trench. To save them from the clutches of the Megalodon, a prehistoric 75-foot shark once believed to be extinct, a visionary oceanographer recruits expert rescue diver Jonas Taylor. Teamed with the oceanographer's daughter Su-Yin, Taylor must try to outwit the greatest predator alive, a killer he's faced once before. Yeah, it's a little better than IMDb's description. So basically, the gist of this is you have a movie about a bunch of scientists on a very intriguing station, research station in the middle of the western, well, not the middle, but like the far western Pacific Ocean. And on what should be a gloriously celebratory dive to test a theory that there might be a whole other world beneath a thermocline at the bottom of what we believe to be the bottom of the ocean. A group of divers is sent down, and yes, as we said, they get attacked and trapped at the bottom. The movie actually opens with Taylor's previous experience, which left him scarred
Is he
for
gonna
life.
narrate the whole fucking movie?
Ooh.
Is what?
Oh wait, I thought we were muted, babe.
No, we're not.
So we're gonna need her closer to the fucking.
I'm not really sure what was going on there.
Disorganization.
Anyway, so with that basic setup, why don't we start? Is Kim joining us tonight? Is she going to tell us about her first experience?
Go for it.
Okay, so my first experience with the Meg was last summer when myself, Brandon, and Jake, and five other friends of ours, we rented a house in the Outer Banks, and I got stuck in the beach house for a couple of days working on my vacation, and was like, screw it. We brought our PlayStation 4 with us. I connected my HBO account and started watching the Meg. It was on the HBO account. And I had myself a fucking good time. That movie, it's such a fun movie. Is it a good movie? No. Is it Oscar worthy? Hell no. Is it fun as fuck? Yes.
All right, how about you, Brandon?
That's a review.
Well, my first exposure was in a comic book, seeing a picture of it getting ready to swallow a cruise liner. And I thought, well, this might be fun. And then I saw Jason Statham was on it, and I said, well, that's also pretty fun. And then I heard that it really couldn't swallow the cruise liner, and I was like disappointed. But then I found out that we were doing this, so it inspired me to go ahead and watch it. And after watching this one and Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus back to back, I can safely say this movie is actually quite a fun ride and vastly better written than some certain films out there, namely Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. But I will say this: this shark does not take out a airplane in the middle of the air, and that is a shame.
Well, it does just about everything else, but not that.
And not the cruise ship. I was promised a cruise ship. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a really bad TV movie called Shark Attack 3 Megalodon where you do get to see that if you so really want it.
All right. Well, how about you, Dustin?
The effects are bad enough. There's something you could have probably done like yourself with just Windows Movie Maker or whatever. It is very phony. Well,
or maybe some toy sharks in a bathtub.
Honestly, well, what that Shark Attack 3 does is they literally take like nature footage of a great white shark and like Photoshop shrink a boat into its mouth. It is unbelievably bad. But anyway, so I have a bit of a history kind of with the Meg as like a thing. So it's based on a book that I read a lot in elementary and high school. It's actually a book series. There are at least 5 of them. I've kind of lost track. And so when this movie was announced, I was like, hell yeah, at last. Because Steve Alton, the guy who wrote the Meg series, has been kind of saying, movie coming soon. And he's been saying that for about 20 years. Like it keeps getting stuck in like development hell.
Right.
And so when it was finally, announced with, it was originally announced, I think, with a different director, different actors, everything was different. And then it changed and it was like, well, as long as they still make it, like I'll, good enough, and then when it did come out, it was kind of underwhelming. I was still really happy with it. Like it was still like a fun, like decent movie, but it does differ substantially. It does differ substantially from the book, which is just better. But I still really like this movie and recommend it pretty frequently. So the shark itself looks really great. And there's kind of a lot to like. Although one thing that really hamstrung it is, am I talking too long?
No, you're good.
Well, one thing that kind of hamstrung it is they had to, with the funding that they had to get, so it pretty much became like a split, like Chinese, I think, American production.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, there was a lot of stuff that they couldn't do. Like they had a lot of like gore footage that they couldn't use. It had to be PG-13. So they had to really tone a lot of it down. And I think you can probably tell when you see the movie.
Yeah. Well, that's just for reference. American Chinese co-productions are getting more and more common as movies become more international and as China becomes a bigger part of the international market. So obviously, you're gonna see more of those. I mean, like, I think one of the first really big ones was the Great Wall, if I'm not mistaken, at least for the modern era. And I like that more than most people.
I never got to see it. I thought that looked really.
I heard
cool.
I heard it was all right. It was just one of those things where it was one of several like decent movies that you just didn't.
I saw it.
I saw it
in the theater.
Ooh. Another really big Chinese American production that I saw in theater was Kung Fu Panda 3. That was a fun one.
Well, I know that China helped keep the Transformers series alive.
I'm sure it did. No, sweat sucks so much fucking dick.
The point is that it's getting more and more common.
It is. Warcraft, I think it's like that's one of those movies that was successful because of the Chinese market. They're a huge deal when it comes to releasing movies,
well,
especially big extravaganza movies.
And not just releasing, but also now on the producing side,
Right.
as evidenced by The Great Wall and this film, and probably more in the future. And the and with the advantage with that is that you do get to see more of an international presence for a big movie like this, plus a setting that you never really get to see with stories like this, because usually we're so accustomed to the mold that Jaws set, with it being an American coastal city, and
Which
we've
is
seen
weird.
that a million times at this point with every shark film, that it's kind of neat to see it.
They missed an opportunity, I think, with this one of not, even though they were Chinese, they could have had them play it like it was Japan.
Well, I think in the book it actually is Japan.
Yeah,
Has
right.
anyone else read the book?
No, I have not. Okay, I guess that's a good point to throw out my first impression.
It's been very many years since I've sat down with the book.
Yeah, I've never read the books. I've been intrigued by them. I went into this 100%.
They are good.
Just being a movie, that I knew friends of mine had read the books and said they were really good, and most of them were pretty much of the same opinion as Dustin. Like, it's still a fun movie. It's, obviously, I think most people at this point that aren't fucking simpletons are familiar with the idea of like it being an adaptation. The whole popularization of the remake fucking, or like what do you call it, based on terminology, I think is the problem with that. If it was all adapted from and had stayed that way forever, I think people would be more accepting of the changes in remakes or adaptations, because this clearly is not trying to follow the book from what I've gathered.
No,
it's just taking the base elements of the book and making like a fun.
It originally did, but they were kind of not allowed to do a lot of like the nastier stuff. Like there's a lot more carnage in the book.
I'd love to see what they had to cut too. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was fun. Got a little too action movie for me at a certain point in like the final act, but I think that's what it's designed to do or whatever. So,
right.
Not complaining, just felt like it took a little bit away from the feeling of the first 2/3 of the movie. So that'd be my first impression.
I guess if I thought about seeing a movie in the theater, this is one I would have wanted to see in the theater.
Sure.
But I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater. I waited for it to come out on DVD and saw the trailers rape the hell out of on TV until I finally bit the bullet and bought it. So I was entertained with the movie. I mean, granted, when I read the book, I was like fairly young. I was like 12. So for me, seeing them recap the book somewhat was at least entertaining. Yeah, they could have gone a little bit more gorier because I remember a lot more gore happening. But I think for the most part we kind of got what we wanted to see out of a megalodon. I mean, the Carcaricus megalodon is what the scientific name of it is, if I remember correctly.
It was Carcharodon, but I think they may have changed that. I feel like I read they changed that. I don't know. So anyway, so did Dane, have you done your first impression?
Not yet. I just gave the larger context for the American-Chinese co-productions, but my first experience with the Meg was I went to, this was years ago, but I actually have seen a real-life megalodon jaw that was at an aquarium, and they showed how massive the mouth of a megalodon really was, and it's really, really, really big. Like it could fit several grown men in there, no problem. And so, they're not exaggerating when they're showing just how massive those things were. But as far as the film goes, I saw it actually just yesterday. I had wanted to see it in the theater because I am a fan of cheesy shark movies and things. I adore the Sharknado series and just things like that. And it looked like, oh, look at that! It's like a big budget version of that kind of thing with name actors in it and big distribution and everything. And I, for one reason or another, I never got to see it in the theater. I mean, that was a pretty chaotic time in my life, and it continues to be chaotic, but in a different way. So I never got to see it, but I saw it yesterday, and I really dug it. I was impressed with not only the large scope of the film itself and how cool they made underwater travel, which it is cool in real life. And they made it look very cool, and also I was pleased with. I think the pacing was good. It was. I like Jon I don't know if it's Jon Turteltaub or Turteltaub, however you pronounce it. But he's done a lot of good movies like Cool Runnings and National Treasure and While You Were Sleeping and things like that. He doesn't get a lot of credit. He also did Phenomenon, so he's done a lot of good movies. But I think this was a very good one to add to his filmography as far as being very large scale. And most of all, I was impressed with how genuinely laugh out loud funny it was. Like I was impressed with the good humor in the film.
I don't know. Well, a lot of the jokes I thought were kind of I don't want to say cheap, but I want to kind of easy. I think that's maybe the good way. It's like easy. It's like, oh man, I can't swim. It's like,
yeah,
try harder.
Well, I'm thinking more of like, I mean, there were some that I thought you said cheesy at first, which I was like, that's the whole point. It's meant to be cheesy, but no, I think easy. Yes, I could see that, but I was impressed with like I thought Rainn Wilson was really funny, and I like him in anything, but like one of my favorite parts was when they blow up what they think is the shark, but it's actually a whale. And they're like, "Yeah, is it dead? Do you have confirmation?" He's like, "Yes, there are pieces of it all over us."
And they just got like blower sprayed with goo.
I know, I love that. But it's like it's little moments like that that just made me laugh out loud. And like some of the character interactions I thought were pretty darn good.
Or how about when
even the easy jokes fit the movie?
Yeah, or like the one that is very easy, not so much as a single joke, but as a character, is the scared black guy trope. Which
he does it so good.
That was that's kind of unfortunate, I thought.
Well, but that's actually what I was going to say. Is like that is such a trope. But out of all of the ones like that, I think this is one of the better ones.
Yeah, because he's like, you can't swim, and he's like, why you pulled that racist shit? And he's like, no, dude, literally, you work in the middle of the ocean.
On the ocean, like
it
in
was,
this
it
thing.
was funny,
Yeah,
like
he really. I think that despite that being a trope, they milked it pretty good because the actor
because he's like I'm a
was,
trope. I don't give a fuck. Get me out of here. I quit.
And it looked like the actor really got how to do that character well. Like it didn't feel like it was like a studio note. It felt like he really believed in it.
Like kind of organic. Yeah, I'll give him that. I mean,
all,
performances were good.
The black guy from Friday the 13th, the remake, which I recently just watched, is a lot more egregious of an example of like oh god, they forced this poor man to do like token black man moments,
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like, that's a trope, but I think that guy really did a good job of selling it, and and it's not like
out of it afterwards. They didn't just leave it as a trope. They made a joke.
And there are a lot of things like that in this film that could have been there's a lot of like tropey moments, but the way in which they are written make them come across like they're either more sincere or more. They just have a different flavor
Then it would have 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like like the whole scene where they're getting Jason Statham to come back. That's like right out of like something like Commando or something where the action star doesn't want to go back in action, but then all of a sudden there's some compelling thing like a personal tie that makes him come out of retirement to do this thing, and it's like we've seen that so many times, but
I gave that up.
well, and I one of my favorite parts was when he's like, "You're gonna try to appeal to my better nature, but I don't have one, so I'll say no." Or you're gonna try this, and I'll say no. It's like so they're already several steps ahead of us, and I'm like, okay, and it doesn't feel too fourth wall breaky, but it's like okay, they know that we've seen movies like that, that kind of scene before, so they didn't have to go down the same kind of road.
You know what this movie reminded me of when I was thinking about it? There was no coincidence that it came in a packet that included the 2 Deep Blue Sea movies. And and when I saw this thing, my first thought was, I want to watch Deep Blue Sea again. And I don't know why, but there's something about it. I guess maybe it's because they have that scientist in the lab. Or like in Jaws, was it Jaws 3 that had the lab? Like Jaws 3 had the underwater.
Hey, I like Jaws 3. Jaws 3 had the theme park.
Yeah, people hate on it, but it's actually I feel kind of
fun.
Well, and I didn't care all that much for Deep Blue Sea the first time I saw it, but I'm sure if I saw it now, I'd get more out of it.
I love
Deep Blue Sea is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So with this one, I actually did see this in theaters, and it was a specific. We were talking before about how there's more of an Asian presence in Hollywood now with the co-productions with China and that sort of thing. But also, and of course, if you watch our channel, you know that I harp on this a lot. I feel that Hollywood has given Asian short shrift for years. So I like to see more and more. It just so happened that this was in theaters at the same time as the adaptation of the first of Kevin Kwan's books, Crazy Rich Asians. And I got it in my head that I have to go see these as a double bill. So I did. And it was a very interesting bit of counter programming.
And they were both Warner Brothers movies too.
Yeah. But and they have some interesting connections, not the least of which is they both feature interesting Asian covers of popular American songs. But I'm not.
That Thai version of "Hey Mickey, You're So Fine."
Yeah, exactly.
That's so fucking hard.
And then, of course, the other one had Chinese renditions of "Yellow," "Material Girl," and a couple other songs. I like their version of "Material Girl." Actually, it was pretty good. But anyway, so this was. I went to see it thinking it'll be enjoyable, and I was impressed. I did not expect to be impressed by it. It's a good example of where sometimes when you set the bar kind of low, you set yourself for a better viewing experience. Because I'm like, okay, the film's called The Meg, and it's a giant shark eats people. How good can it be?
The book is legit pretty sweet.
I did not realize it was based on a book when I went to go see it.
In the book has a lot more like outrageous moments in it. Like so it's not really a spoiler since this doesn't happen in the movie, but in the book they kill it by his submersible is swallowed and he gets out and like hacks its organs up from the inside. Like he carries a fossil meg tooth with him. And it's like the only sharp thing he has on him. So he basically uses it to like cut a hole in the shark's stomach. He's in like a pressure suit, so he's not like killed by this. And
how
like,
the fuck did they not do this in the movie?
Well, because Sharknado did it first.
Well, the shark is in the book. The shark is so big that he can kind of swim around in there.
Mhm.
And he basically like slices its arteries with the
So
fossil tooth.
Sharknado is what the Meg really should have been.
Well, I mean, because you remember he goes inside the shark with
Yeah.
the chainsaw and he cuts his way out.
But does it bite through the Golden Gate Bridge?
Statham
Well,
solves his problems with a chainsaw.
I mean, Sharknado had rained down sharks on just about every major city in the world.
Right,
So,
right.
you know, I should hope that would count for something.
So, at any rate, so basically with this one, we kind of did the basic overview, but it opens basically, you're talking about like those tropes, and this opens with like the trope of the kind of the action intense scene that kind of sets up, you know, some of the drama, kind of like Jurassic Park did with that opening raptor scene. You know, you got the opening sequence of Statham is a rescue. He rescues people who are trapped under the ocean, and
He's unable to rescue all of them.
right, he and his crew they're unable to act quickly enough, and he ends up having to shut the hatch and leave his crew and several of the people they were trying to rescue behind. But I
Well,
think
he leaves 4 and saves 11.
yeah, he still saves a fair number. And of course, one of them is this total dick who's the doctor called Heller. And
Oh, yeah.
Heller does not care for him after this. I don't. Hard to tell if he liked him before, but he definitely does not. In
Seems like he probably didn't. It made the least sense to me out of the plot, where it's like, this guy's the doctor. He totally understands that they already had a bunch of wounded motherfuckers too. Like, it was 11 people on the ship, 4 people behind. It's simple math.
But he blames, what do they call it, pressure sickness or whatever it is. He basically
something like that.
He basically blames him for panicking and not doing everything he could have done. And then, of course,
if the entire submarine didn't blow up seconds after they detached.
Yeah, which am I the only one who thought that everyone in the movie was way too hard on him? I mean, like,
yes.
Yeah, I mean,
it seemed manufactured, like it wasn't.
Yeah, I would think any whatever court martial or whatever, like if he adequately explained the situation as far as like there was a limited amount of time and you know it was impossible to save everyone relative to you know what else was happening. You don't even have to mention that there was a giant shark. It's like you know time was ticking and it was either save most of them and live or you know get blown up saving none of them.
You see, this is where he apparently made the mistake. He did mention that he thinks there was some giant creature.
Yeah.
It was, you know, and of course the doctor paints him as a nut job, and his wife doesn't believe him and leaves him, and it costs him his job and all that kind of stuff. So then you flash forward to the present, and like I said, you have this really gorgeous looking station. I was sitting there and I'm going, I would have liked to get a job here.
Yeah, it's owned by like Ocean Elon Musk too.
Right, I know. And
which if anybody's seen, if anybody's seen Archer, I don't remember which season it is, but there's a season where they're on like a sea lab kind of thing with Cheryl's brother, and their Elon Musk guy reminded me of Cheryl's brother character. Like he's kind of like not there, but he's like, I'm in charge. What are we doing now? Where am I?
Right.
He has that kind of vibe to it. And I think Dane kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. The movie has a really good use of space. Like since a lot of it takes place like on open water, like it feels like a very like large, wide movie, which fits. Even that station has pretty big like corridors. Like it feels open despite being in enclosed space.
And they even do a pretty good bit of in movie reference to the space. Where Rainn Wilson, of course, is the financier, the Elon Musk, as you say, Morris. and he is visiting this station because they're about to make this historic dive. They're not really done with the station, but it's operational. And he walks in, and it's this kind of ugly yellow room. Really looks like a hospital elevator. And I believe he's standing with Zhang and the Dr. Zhang, who's played by Winston Chow, and Suyin, Zhang's daughter, who's played by Bing Bing Lee. And he basically is like, you couldn't afford a place it. It's not like you couldn't afford. Yeah, it was like you couldn't afford. I don't remember how he said it, but he was very critical of the appearance.
Yeah, like a nicer entrance.
Yes. Like you want this to be the first thing people see, or or couldn't you have a nicer thing? And then they're like, yes, we could, and they open the door, and you see the.
So sweet, but I agree with his points on the elevator. Like, come on, bro.
Yeah, well, it looked like. You know what it looked like? It looked like they probably like retrofitted a like oil drilling station, and then put this brand new state of the art facility underneath. I mean that's what it looked like to me.
The oil rig.
Well, it looks like that's what they did. It looks like they just retrofitted it, which makes sense because it's already out there.
Yeah,
I can see that.
But
I mean, yeah, like
and
fucking.
actually, I could see that
On the fucking light up with fish swimming underneath them or
It's
something.
like they took Deep Space Nine and combined it with SeaWorld underwater.
Well, in the way that Morris is presented, I could see him doing that on purpose. Like specifically, oh, we got an abandoned oil rig. Let's turn it into a research station. That kind of thing. And it kind of actually, Rainn Wilson's character in this one, he reminds me a lot of the guy running the show, theoretically at least, in Jurassic World, the one who's played by Irfan Khan. In both cases, they're actually they're actually pretty likable characters overall.
Yeah.
Really, billionaires that are putting their profit above everyone else. Rainn Wilson's tossing around Semtex at one point in this movie.
At one point, yeah, I mean, as the movie goes on, you realize Morris does have a little bit of that almighty dollar to his personality, and it shows.
Of course, bro.
But he still, at least in a way, he cares about what he's doing. And I do love Rainn Wilson's performance. I thought he did a great job with this one.
Oh yeah, and I adore him as an actor because he can be extremely funny, but also he can do drama well. Right. And I liked his character precisely for the reasons that you said, that he occupies that trope of the rich guy who's funding the thing, who only cares about money and everything like that, except that he is pretty likable on the whole, and he doesn't seem like he is without compassion or understanding of what everyone's going through, even when he doesn't make the necessary calls that he says he did. Right. You also get the sense that he's not like faking emotions either. Like he almost seems like he's trying to trying to humor people or trying to not make a bad situation worse. And while also trying to do what he feels is best, which is not only, take out the shark for, their financial safety. Because, I mean, he's absolutely right that, that having that thing out there in the open water would open them up to all kinds of lawsuits. I mean, right. He's not wrong on that level, but he also does seem like he wants to kill it, because that's what, he's trying to make this go away, but he's also, to his credit, he's there in the helicopter, going to drop the things on it. So, I mean, I like that he had more dimension to him than other characters like that. Plus the fact that he, actually had some useful ideas, like putting a tracker on it, and so he wasn't just totally tangential or without any kind of compassion. And I was like, hey, there you go.
He very much reminded me of like a stand-in for James Cameron.
Kind of, yeah.
Like,
I didn't think that there are
Not for a
any.
minute do I believe James Cameron is there through all of the prep for those things that he's doing. I think that he's there for whatever they're shooting in the documentary, and then the end part of it, you know. And I kind of, that's what I took away from Rainn Wilson's character, was he was like the James Cameron of it. Like, okay, you guys research this, but I'm just also kind of like an eccentric dude that will chuck fucking Semtex at this thing.
I didn't think that there were any major one-note characters in this film overall, or at least none of the main cast, I would say. Maybe some of the side ones, but again, I felt like everybody had a little bit more of a twist to them than you might normally expect.
Right.
Like, it wasn't just the, rich, corrupt, evil dude, generic action guy.
Yeah.
Woman who is perpetual victim.
Actually, in one of the special features I saw, they made a point of saying that we're used to seeing Jason Statham in action roles, but this is more of an adventure role. And I'm thinking, no, that's not inaccurate. That's actually, this is a little bit more of an adventure film than a straight up action.
Yeah.
In some ways. But so you also have, in this room, we mentioned, Zhang is sort of like the lead scientist. He's the one whose theory they're all working on. And actually, there is this great part where it's like, he's like, this is the part where we find out if you wasted $1.3 billion. And Rainn Wilson's like, he's kidding, right?
Oh, I love that. And he's like, are you serious?
So,
that other guy's like, yeah.
That was really funny. And, well, and that also, you can kind of understand why he's so gung-ho to find something that he can monetize in some way, just because he's got so much on the line. And I mean, the way that he phrases that doesn't exactly fill the inner businessman inside of you, doesn't exactly fill it with confidence,
Right. It's not the type of thing you fund unless you have some interest in it yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, if I was just a billionaire, like, just okay, like if I'm just gonna, like, if I let my drunk brain control me, I'm pretty much just gonna buy casinos or, like, the things billionaires buy, right?
I think this will be
Sporting
more,
arenas.
this will be more my speed, actually. So
I'll buy the fucking, whatever arena they're having the Super Bowl in this year and just name it Big Dick Dome or something. Like, and I can afford to do it. When I think of guys like this, Rainn Wilson's character, he obviously did this because he had some, at least, childhood interest. And
and actually, and you get a bit of that, and I actually enjoyed this part with when we're introduced to the people in the sub. And we're introduced to Lori, who is actually Jonas's ex-wife, you come to find out, played by Jessica McNamee. Mm-hmm. And they talk about her background, and she apparently she made a homemade torpedo to blow up a whaling ship, I think it was.
Well, she was basically part of that thing.
Right.
That fucking organization you see in that reality show about, like, anti-whaling.
Right.
Or whatever.
But anyway, so she tells him about that, and then he kind of makes a little side roll. That was a good hire. It's kind of like, so he's got a little bit of a boat in that race, as it were. And then, of course, in the sub, we also have Olafur Dari Olafsson playing a dude called The Wall, and you have Masayoka Hiro as Toshi.
I love that guy.
Toshi is my favorite. Those two dudes are my favorite characters in the whole movie.
I love that guy because he plays he plays the medical examiner on Hawaii Five-0 in at least the first two seasons of the newer
he was Hero on Heroes, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and I think he was in the movie version of Get Smart as well.
I believe so.
Which is so weird, dude, because like 3 out of the 4 movies I watched recently also had Hero alumni in them as like main cast.
That's pretty neat. Which not to get too far afield, but just as we were introducing characters, you had the main scientist and his daughter. But when they're first introduced, I swore that I thought they were husband and wife. Like her father looks like she could be her.
You know,
He could be her
I've
age.
learned lately
I think he's
reviewing
like-
like Japanese movies is that half the time I assume that the husband and like the younger lady are father and daughter,
Oh.
and then I learned later that no, that's actually like a husband and a wife.
So it's kind of the opposite situation.
So
But
the
that's-
daughter's
It's
who-
Japanese society, man. Like, and especially depending on where you're looking at it at, they're real reserved, so you can never tell.
Yeah. Well, I remember like she's like, what? That's her father? Wow, they look like they could have been husband and wife. Because he really did not look that old to me.
He's not that old. I mean, he's let's see, Winston Chow. Well, he's born 1960, so
Yeah.
he's a
When
little
she's
bit-
like the Lee Bing Bing, she's like 40 something, but boy, does she not look it.
I know.
In Japanese movies, again, they tend to be a little more reserved. So
She was born
you can watch
73,
and
so
be forgiven for mistaking the relationship because they're not exactly like making out or fucking every other
Yeah.
scene.
so he's
Unless
he's
one of
about
those
17 years older than her, I think.
Yeah.
anyway-
Well, no wonder I got confused because that's really not a large gap.
Right.
And plus she looks a lot younger than she actually is.
Right. And then, of course, and she's a scientist like he is. And, of course, they're joined by her little girl, who's played by Shuya Sophia Kai and is called Mei Ying. And Mei Ying is best character. She is hilarious.
Yeah.
She's a sassy little girl.
Absolutely loved her.
Yeah, she was very cute and was not annoying, which is
Mhm.
I don't like
very
her
good
forced
thing for a
I don't
char-
like the forced Asian accent thing. It
Mm.
feels like they told her to talk with like a, you know what I mean, like that.
It's a little racist.
That's
that-
right.
It is a little bit.
That they
Like,
told her to
they-
do what?
It feels like they told her to talk with like that broken talk. Like I don't for a minute feel like that little girl doesn't sound just like my kid if I'm sitting next to her. Like you could feel that fucking fluent Englishness in her
Well, apparently,
because she's so young.
Apparently, she's born in China, but she's got a Chinese mother and a British father. So
Yeah, dude,
she
that
would
kid
have
is
an-
totally not speaking like that. On
yeah,
a
but she
regular
would have an
day.
accent anyway. You cut it. I mean,
She might have
Yeah.
a British accent, but she's
Yeah.
a good. You could tell she was a good enough actor. I bet
Oh,
you
yeah.
she could have thrown it to an English or an American one.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
she's
no, this-
also a little kid too, so I mean, kids don't
Yeah.
necessarily have like the most perfect sentence structure or anything
didn't-
like that.
Yeah,
So
well, let's
find
just
any of
put it this
them-
way: she
I didn't find-
definitely did not have that broken, stereotypical Chinese accent like they gave her in the movie.
Yeah. well,
I don't-
but even then, it wasn't anywhere near as bad as I've seen it in other movies.
Yeah.
So
True.
you know.
A good example, a recent film that I thought was a great film in almost every way, but I was deeply disturbed by how stereotypical the accent of the main character, Hong Chow, in Alexander Payne's Downsizing. I mean, that was a good example of one where it was like, did she want to do this? Did the director
I don't
tell her
think
to
so.
do this?
Yeah.
Well, no,
I
she
think-
actually. I know the answer to that. I
Yeah.
haven't seen the film. I have
She
to say, but I
says
did
she
see.
loved it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
she said that she based it on, I think, her own parents and people
Right.
that she knew.
She did say
Um,
that, and I'm just, but watching it, it just feels cringy because it's so on the nose. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
if
like-
you can't
Yeah.
do it, don't do it.
But
If you don't normally talk that way when you're not like forcing yourself to talk proper, then you probably shouldn't do it.
But if that
Well,
was
it's
her choice, more
it's a
power
weird
to her.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing because like you have like Oprah Winfrey saying similar things about like the kinds of characters in like Tyler Perry movies or something that, oh, these are people that I've really known. And it's like, okay, well, that may be true, but is that necessarily the right path to take for this film? It's like
Well-
there's a fine line between representing life as it is or as you've experienced it versus what do you want to put into this film in a way that people will understand it or relate to it or whatever, and
Right.
have it not be misunderstood.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. I think even where the stereotyped characters are coming from, I mean, maybe this is like a white guy approach to it. It probably is, but I feel like I've heard other people of different ethnicities have fairly similar conversations with me about it.
Well-
A stereotype is funny in the right place, you know.
Yeah,
In the
well,
right
I
place, in
mean,
the right context, it is funny, you know. Objectively funny.
It can be, but also like stereotypes of all kinds. Like they tend to, at least in their origins, they tend to come from some form of reality, but then they just kind of lose.
Exactly. It comes from a place of prejudice, maybe.
Did
But then
any of
most,
Brandon
like good fun stereotypes get adopted by the people, you know. What I mean?
Yeah, well, but what I was saying, like they, at least the basic elements, like they come from some place in reality, but then they just get distorted the more times that they get, talked about or portrayed or whatever, and then eventually it's like, well, who knows?
My point is that, like, a stereotype for whatever race can be fucking funny if it's used at the right point with the right context behind using it.
Yeah.
That's why we find black movies funny. Not to call them black movies, but that's the only, as far as I know, like blaxploitation and that type of shit. That's the only title for them,
Let's actually let's go back to something on this when it comes to the little kid. There is one point that we're all close to, but we're missing. Is this is a child in a movie like this, and the child one is not used as a, oh, I did something stupid, you need to come save me. The child is also not stupid for the most part, and the child is not persistently dragging the plot down like most children. Now, if you look at those things, yeah, there are some things there. I mean, there's that whole bit about the black guy not being able to swim. That's which is,
it's handled in a way that's actually humorous instead of just being like token black guy can't swim moment,
Yeah, the dialogue and the actor, they both really sell it because they make it seem like this is a real human being saying this and not a cardboard cutout,
Right. And I'm sure your wife would agree, Brandon. Like, there's ways we can all come together and make those jokes without them being fucking offensive, or without them being like really discriminatory. It's just all of us making fun of each other for like our stereotypical traits, and I think in the right context, that shit's funny.
Well, also the thing I really liked, that kind of a movie trope that they thankfully don't actually result in a pretty important character being where Statham gets in the submersible and the girl is there, and you think, oh boy, this is going to be the moment where she's the stowaway, and what are you doing here, and oh, I came to save my mommy. It wasn't anything like that. She's actually pretty sharp, and they have some pretty good intelligent conversations, and she goes down, and she doesn't do like obviously stupid things to put herself in danger, and she doesn't like have a lisp or weird speech mannerisms to try to make her cute or anything.
She's there as a character in the story like everybody else. It's not like a kaiju movie where they put some annoying kid that can't act and can basically just yell Godzilla at the top of their lungs.
And also noting that she's probably a slight nod. There's a lot of nods, I think, scattered throughout the film that are probably direct or indirect nods to both Jurassic Park and Jaws. And I think her presence is a little bit of a nod to Jurassic Park.
And a heck of a lot less annoying than those kids.
Much less annoying than those kids. Yes, much less annoying.
For me, the little girl, am I muted?
No, go ahead.
For me, the little girl, she was a waste of a character. I get like put a kid in, make it cute, blah blah blah, but she literally served no purpose. And you know who else didn't serve a purpose to me?
Yeah.
Her ex-wife.
Yeah, and I'm
Now,
not.
Well, I have
no,
to.
hold on. Hear me out. Hear me out. That
Okay.
character could have been someone else to Jonas. She could have been his sister, his best friend, whomever. We've already seen it in other movies with a rescue subplot, like Vertical. What's it called? Vertical Limit, where Crystal Dawn has to go in and save his sister at the top of like Niagara Falls, not Niagara Falls, K2 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand why they had her as his ex-wife, and then so he said
That's the only relationship you have with a Jason Statham. His face is like a well-worn saddle and shit. You know, if I'm a man here, if he was in my presence, I'd throw my panties at him.
Yeah, but like he has the ex-wife, but at the same time, you have this supposed undercurrent love plot between him and the Asian chick. I don't get that. It's confusing as hell.
And one thing
Well,
that
I have
probably was better, Dustin, you can probably tell us better because you've read the book. But I understand they changed her dramatically from the version in the book, and that one was more antagonistic.
In the book, I think her character. So I actually didn't catch her name, so it's a little fuzzy. In the book, I think her character is a friend of Jonas's. Jonas is more of a scientist in the book than like an adventurer. And in the book, his wife is having an affair with his friend, and his wife is killed very violently by the shark in the book. It's actually kind of like one of the big like set pieces.
Yeah.
Which maybe says something about the psychology there. But in the movie, she doesn't really do a whole lot other than kind of like incentivize him to, come to the rescue.
Well,
She's
can I?
basically a plot device.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was gonna say I wanted to interject there. I think as far as like the purpose that she and the little girl served, I think they're probably those two characters, at least functionally, are probably the most storytelling devicey out of all of the characters. But the function that they serve is to try to make it more okay for Jason Statham to realize that he doesn't have to self-isolate and that he can move on and can embrace more of a kind of family man type role, more so than he's used to. And I like that, even though it's implied that their relationship was very volatile, that I like that at this point in their relationship that they don't like really despise each other, or like they can't be in the same room or something. Like there's still like some element of the love that they once had, but she's also kind of giving him the permission to move on with his life and to not have to feel any more beholden to the past. So I think that that's the function that they both serve. But I will concede that they both are the most plot devicey of the characters in terms of their function.
I feel you, dude. I just think that's entirely inappropriate to put in the middle of a giant shark movie.
They kind of inject some drama into it for
it's just stupid.
Kind of no reason. Well,
they
do take the dramatic plots, the human plots, like out of the novel's storyline, because a lot of it is like, it's like, I think my wife is having an affair, and there are a lot of scenes of his wife like cheating on him. And so that's where a lot of the human conflict kind of comes from in the book.
I don't know that the movie needed to be 2 hours long, right?
Well, I mean, I guess that it comes down to like, you could have had a lot more of that and not as much in the way of shark carnage, or you could have gone full blown and had it be a sharktopus. You know what I mean? It's like, it could be. I think that they achieved a decent balance of giving it some kind of human, some kind of human emotional anchor while also giving some good giant shark action.
The padding in this one felt much less like padding than in
Oh,
Mega
God.
Shark versus Giant Octopus.
Yeah, I
I
was
mean,
gonna say, Mega Shark showed me what how bad padding can be in a movie between
Oh,
these
yeah.
scenes. This was
Yeah,
nothing.
this
This
is like a
good.
fucking. This is like a well insulated sleeping bag, and fucking. Mega Shark versus Octopus is like one of those sheds your dad over insulates or something.
so
The
Which,
walls are
yeah,
3.5 feet
you
thick.
so
you know what's interesting? Hold on. Speaking of tropes and how to give them some kind of humanity and stuff, this just came to me, but I thought about forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but Jon Turteltaub. Let's just say
Nobody
um,
knows.
I don't know either, but um, just thinking back to some of the other films that he's done that I mentioned, like Phenomenon, like National Treasure, Cool Runnings. These movies have characters that they occupy tropes, and yet the scripts manage to and the direction they managed to extract enough genuine humanity out of them and some surprising elements of either depth or um, believable character interactions to where they can rise above their tropiness.
Exactly.
So
That's
that's
what I would
and that's a point in his favor because otherwise these characters would feel very cardboard, and yet they're able to serve that story function and still feel like people. And I just noticed that he's done that with his other films as well.
Well,
Well,
right,
not
dude.
for
I mean,
helps,
that's kind of something. Sorry, but that's something that like you basically worded way better than I could.
Mhm.
It's the stereotypes can be funny if they're handled in the right context with the right people doing it, and they do something like that, or they make it more than what it is,
Well, and those other films I mentioned, they were all very different
That do that.
genres.
right.
Like if you guys ever watched Key and Peele on Comedy Central,
Uh,
that's a great example of dudes that
Good
do
stuff.
like that type of humor, where it's taking the stereotypes and blasting them to the point where they're ridiculous, and then
Mhm.
also making them like make a little sense at the same time.
Right.
Mhm.
You know,
Well, I was just
I personally think some of the writing for the character development was kind of watered down to make them a bit more simplistic because
Right.
isn't this dubbed into Chinese? Like, how exactly was this shot?
see, that's
You know what I
one
mean?
thing I was wondering about. 'Cause some of the dialogue seems off.
A lot of it seems kind of simplified, I think.
I think so. I think
Well, that wouldn't surprise me, honestly. I mean, actually, there is a precedent for it, which is that the more that films are internationalized and the more that they have some very different countries and cultures, making them happen financially, the more that you do have to simplify things to make them translate, not just language wise, but culturally.
Movies, for sure. Like there's some like off-brand sort of great value 80s action movies where you can see the fact that they wrote it so that it can be easily dubbed.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and also, even before the, like, let's say Chinese American co-productions, even before that, you could start to see that happen in like the 2000s, where movies were the international marketplace was more of the overall market share, and so therefore concepts that could easily translate like action or horror or sci-fi, those tended to do well across the different borders and everything. So I think that there's a decent precedent for that.
Cyclically, you know what I mean? Like we're
Yeah.
back again like 20 years later in a cycle where horror's doing really well.
Mhm.
And then it's
Right.
gonna die off again for a bit. And then we'll see it come back again like 10 years from now. Yeah.
All right. So real quick, I want to pull us back because we're up on an hour and we still haven't even finished the character
Real?
introductions. So I did want to at least make sure we mentioned a couple of the other characters.
Yeah,
we
we
have-
talked
we
a
have-
lot about characters in a movie where the characters, in my opinion, are kind of thin for the most part.
What about the shark? What about its feelings? What about its
Oh, their shark is dope. So they
So-
I don't know how accurate per se it could have been, because we don't really have any idea what Megalodon's body looked like. We can only kind of guess from its teeth that it was essentially just like a giant great white.
Yeah.
But
Right.
they made it kind of craggy, like very rough, like not smooth. Like it looked
Love
weathered, I guess is the term.
Yeah.
Like an ancient creature.
Which I understand.
Well, they're not even.
There are a lot of deep sea fish that have that sort of, I guess you could say, almost a flabby look. Like they're not as sleek and streamlined as your shallow water fishes.
It's a pressure adaptation.
Right.
Well, megalodons and any kind of shark like that, they're pure muscle.
All right.
Right.
Well, that would be a
Well,
lot.
A
also,
simple fact right here that did this come out before or after James Cameron thunked his fucking stupid little bell thing down on the bottom of the
it was after, I think.
Ooh, harsh.
Okay, then there's no excuse for that because it is definitely like solid ground down there.
Well, the
Well, they were
thing
going
that
to
I
like a weird trench.
the thing
No,
that
the
I was going
Mariana
to say.
Trench, it's been a huge source of. I mean, if you follow like,
Well,
if
they
you're
went
a
to like
nerd at all for,
Lost.
like,
They went to
National
like
Geographic
Sir
and
Arthur Conan
stuff.
Doyle's version of the trench. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
Well,
of course, you know, but I mean,
something
I'm
that
pretty sure I saw like on video that stupid little diving bell thing they put down there thunk down, and then it was like massive sediment. You know, like it's for sure a
you
solid.
know, like sunk into the gunk.
There was
Yeah.
one thing. There was one thing they did. They talk in the bonus features about how there was a lot of room for interpretation when it came to what a megalodon would look like and act like and whatever. They
Definitely.
mentioned that it would have extra gills because of to make it easier to breathe. Which I know some of the like 6 and 7 gill sharks are deep sea sharks, so I guess that makes sense.
I buy it. Okay.
The only thing that really makes no sense whatsoever that they went with the movie was the counter shading, which they kind of did, I guess, to make it look more familiar, more shark-like, but it makes no sense. But I believe in the
Well-
book it was supposedly white, so that was kind of an interesting.
Oh yeah, in the book, these sharks are basically like all albino. Like they practically glow. Like there's a lot of talk about how you can kind of tell they're coming because there's like this very vivid glow
Which
that
cuts
sort of
down
precedes
on
them.
it cuts down
Well,
on
it
the
makes
dramatic part.
sense though. It makes sense though because I mean, creatures that are like in caves or in deep
Right.
ocean water, like there's not a lot of light, so they're either completely albino or even like transparent in some or translucent in some ways or bioluminescent or whatever. So that would make sense.
And that's freakier to me than like a big ass great white
Yeah.
shark. Or
Which
you
like-
imagine-
hey,
could you
here's an idea. X-ray shark. How about that for the next
oh,
shark?
dude,
Well,
like,
I was
I mean,
just gonna say, could you imagine, like, if you got a 70-foot shark covered with green photophores, how creepy that could be?
That would be.
you guys
Which
notice the little references to other like real life cases in Meg?
What's that?
You talking
Real
like
life
real deep
cases
sea
of what?
fish? Or
When the Chinese girl takes the glider down,
Uh-huh.
it's I forget the first name, Roy something. It's labeled after the dude that supposedly flew into the
Oh, yes. The two explorers,
like
Shackleton
he
and,
supposedly flew into the fucking hollow earth and shit.
yeah.
So when she takes it's real subtle, but when she takes it down, it says like, you know, blah blah blah, Richard Byrd on the side.
That's kind of a neat touch.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
one quick thing just before we get too far away from it, but like I was saying with the fact that you were saying that the shark looked weathered, I could definitely believe it if it was the apex predator down there, and obviously, and obviously, apex predator of the ocean waters when it was more common, but also. If you remember from Jaws, when they were saying they're not even necessarily sure how old sharks are, so for all we know, that those two megalodons that we see, for all we know, they could. Well, yeah, but for all we know, they could be really, really old. At least
Yeah.
But it's
several
true.
hundred years.
Didn't Haven't we had articles about sharks being hundreds of years old? Some of them.
Yeah, that's what he's talking about, dude.
I personally think
No,
that's maybe
for-
more speculation because it would be pretty difficult to really check.
Well, but
It's
that's
one of those
exactly my
things where
point,
it's
though.
But
It's
like
like
informed speculation. So I don't know
that's
as
my
much
point.
about sharks as I do other animals.
Our understanding
that's-
of how
that's
sharks
my-
age very much.
That's
comes
exactly
from,
my point, though, is
young-
that because we don't know, for all we know, that thing could be several hundred years old, and could be like the heavyweight champion of the
Of
deep
the sea.
oceans. Yeah, and that's why like that the undisputed the undisputed heavyweight champion of those waters. So. Just kind of an interesting thing to throw out there. For all we know, those sharks could be really old.
Just for a little bit of comparison, there's eels that are alive in lakes in England that were there when World War I happened or some shit. Yeah.
Well, and there's like sea turtles, I think, that are really old too, if I'm not mistaken.
So those eels have been kicking around there like, what the fuck are these guys doing?
Well, if I'm
Holy
not-
shit.
These creatures are still alive up on the
They're
surface.
blowing shit up. No wonder we don't come to the
We're-
surface very often.
Yeah, we're just chilling out being eels down here.
Fun fact:
People are
Steve
like
Alton-
sea monsters, and they start.
Steve Alton has a lot of other books, and one of his better ones, or at least what's my favorite, is The Loch. So it's about the Loch Ness Monster. His version of the Loch Ness Monster is pretty much a giant eel. So kind of relevant to. It's a very good book too.
That sounds.
Well, and I could buy that a lot more than I could buy necessarily a plesiosaur, even though obviously those did exist, obviously. So
we don't know
but-
if they don't somewhere out there.
It's just called The
Yeah.
Loch. You should check it out.
Monitor,
But I mean, yeah, I could buy a giant eel, for sure.
All right. So, shall we do some more on the plot?
Well,
So
the shark gets they
Yeah.
pull off the undersea rescue successfully.
Right.
They take a moment to kind of ooh and ah at the crazy
Most-
environment down there. They're attacked by a giant squid, and that's how they reveal the shark. The shark kills the squid,
Mhm.
which it was a pretty squid.
So
feel-
Which
It is-
and
basically,
giant squids, just very quickly, giant squids were thought to be creatures of myth for quite a long time until not too long ago they discovered one, that was real. So yeah,
Well,
those
dude,
really
I'm
exist.
sure we'll get into all this later, but I'm fairly certain you're familiar with like the bloop or whatever and things
Oh
like
yeah,
there's definitely creatures out there in the ocean.
there's stuff down there we haven't seen yet.
You mean like
Guaranteed.
those unexplained disturbances in the water, like the noises? You mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
that.
So the bloop is basically this thing that just kind of appears like on radar signatures
massive.
sometimes.
And they've determined that it comes from like a biological thing, right, Dustin?
I believe that they've always thought that the bloops were organic in origin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's we know more about outer space than we do about the deepest parts of our oceans. So, I mean, as far as we know, the sky, or I was going to say the sky's the limit, but actually the ocean's the limit as far as what could or couldn't be down there.
Well,
All
dude,
the deep sea stuff that you do see, it's
much
pretty
of a feeling that we're like the dandruff living on the scalp, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're just out here doing what we do, and I don't
more like the hair lice.
Something like that.
you know what I
But
mean.
yeah, I mean, there's so much down there that we have yet to even scratch the surface of. I mean, when they do go down into those thermal vents, like you do see an anglerfish, which those were always my favorite. When I would see the deep sea exhibits at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, but
Dude.
exactly.
I mean,
But
it's like
Thing, and you're like, holy shit! If I ran across that in the ocean, I would absolutely die of fright.
yeah.
And I think like that's the thing that they're skimming right out of the surface.
Yeah.
I'm not going down there at all.
Now
Well,
imagine like a giant one of those, and imagine how scared you'd be.
That's the
that's
fucking
what,
thing that you pulled up like the second try or nope.
And when they break through that membrane for the first time, that's just a really cool scene. To me, it's right up there from when they first show like the real entrance to the lab. Just as a really cool scene, seeing all that open up into to its own underwater world.
Well, it made the most sense when they came out of there, and it was like they explained how they created a thing where the sharks could get out or whatever. And that was cool.
Thermal.
Like it made some sense of it, you know.
Yeah, well, the whole thing, like, I have to, if there's one thing that you have to give the movie credit, they really did. I mean, obviously it's heightened, but like they did make undersea exploration look really cool, which it is cool in real life, and that's, but like to the average movie going audience, they made it look cool and appealing, and it's like I could see like a kid seeing that movie and they would want to go into marine biology or something, like, and that's good because we need more people doing that. And I might have, who knows, I might have done that in another life, but
Terrified of the ocean, man. Fuck
Even
those creatures.
Even in Titanic, when they were starting to discover the Titanic at the beginning of the movie, they made sea travel look cool.
Well, and it was even cooler because it was even cooler because that whole under the sea footage, that was all real from years earlier when they did send a submersible down there to go look at the Titanic wreckage, kind of as research.
They did that in the 90s. That was in the 90s, I think, right? When
Yes,
they
it was.
finally mounted that expedition.
Yeah, it was like the mid 90s, and they did it like first thing even before a single frame of the film was shot. But
even in the Civil War,
that's probably why people were interested.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie though. Like undersea shit is it's a huge phobia for me. Jaws still to this day gets a reaction from me in terms of like fright.
Oh,
like
speaking of Jaws, that this takes me back to the glass containment thing that
dude,
chick
when she's getting swallowed into it.
Yeah,
that part fucking was giving me such anxiety because again, like that's a fucking real phobia for me. It's like being swallowed by something.
Yeah, I went. When I saw that scene, I was like, maybe they should just let it swallow it, because as big as the shark is, that cage was pretty big and it was indestructible, so it probably would have just choked on that. You know what I mean?
And they said they were like,
it would have probably came right out the other end.
Don't worry, it won't break it. No, he's swallowing it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been funny if you had to do like the shark Heimlich?
I did. I kind of did some
Dude, I
some
can't
research
even
on
imagine
that
how much I would
when they
freak
were
out if I was inside something like that.
when they were talking about like the bite pressure. Like I looked into that and it's like, oh yeah, you would need like 90,000 to get in here, and I was like, what could Megalodon do? Because the strongest bite force I knew of was like the Nile crocodile, and I think prehistoric, what I knew was the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is like 20,000 or something like that. And apparently estimates put Megalodon at 40,000. So it wouldn't have gotten into it wouldn't have been able to break the cage, but it could have done a lot more damage to the cage than they thought.
Dude, that's the thing. Like if you watch stuff on sharks or like even like big animals like anacondas, and like most of the time you're still alive when you go in there.
Well, and I would have
you die pretty fast.
I would have imagined.
I don't know, man. I think when you get eaten by a shark, you're alive for like a good third of it.
The digestive.
You would
enzymes.
bleed out and like.
Well, that or the
being swallowed. I'd much rather get chewed up in the ocean, just old school style, than get swallowed by like a massive shark. That to me is the most
digestive
horrifying.
enzymes would have probably done their job, if not bleeding out.
With an anaconda, like it actually can't swallow you unless it's killed you first.
And to be honest, if you really thought about it, remember that creature out in the desert in Star Wars: Return of the Jedi?
Oh,
that might
Sarlacc,
be one
yeah.
of the
That's a
that
little
might
bit
be
bigger.
the genesis of my fear of being like sucked into a creature and slowly digested.
Well, the Sarlacc is its own can of worms. So
Actually, hold on.
I
Kim
fucking
wanted
like
to
it.
say something here.
We've already moved past the top.
Yeah, but-
No, we moved past it.
Oh, sorry, we missed it. Move on.
what do we miss?
Okay, so again, yes, let's.
Yeah. Bring us to heel, Jake.
So basically, as we kind of alluded to, I did want to mention that this is where we lose Toshi, because of course he saves himself to rescue kills himself to rescue the others. And like you said, the shark gets out, but they don't know it right away. They find out when you get the little girl wandering through the hallway, and she looks up, and she sees this great big thing looking right back at her. And it
the trailer
It takes a snap
in
in
the
the window.
And it
Yeah.
takes a moment for that jaw snap to happen. You know what's going to happen.
Tension there.
Right.
Well, that's the shot from the trailer that
right.
honestly I think sold most people who liked this movie on this movie.
Sold me on
Oh,
the
yeah.
movie, still one of my favorite scenes.
It's pretty.
Which
It's pretty cool.
I'm pleased that even though it left a pretty intimidating bite mark, I'm pleased that the glass held and it didn't, well, that was refreshing because, it wasn't like a King Kong situation. Like, these chains are made of chrome steel and breaks him right away. It wasn't like that. It's like, hey, this glass actually did what it was designed to do. Look at that. Even though it has this, beautiful bite radius around it now.
Dude, one of my favorite parts was when that little baby whale came poking its nose up against it, and she's like, "Where's the mother whale?"
Oh,
And then
yeah.
it bit that baby whale in half, like right in front of
It's
her.
like,
and the
oof,
kid.
destruction.
Yeah.
Well, and
was funny.
the only thing that I would ask, which probably Dustin could tell us, but it's a great shot. So the thing, the megalodon approaches slowly from the murky depths, and you see it slowly get into focus, and then it just kind of stops and looks at her before taking a bite out of the window there. Now, from what I recall, obviously sharks need to keep moving forward to keep the water moving through their gills so that they don't die and all that stuff. And they even, I think that they still swim while they're even sleeping, which they don't even really sleep in like the traditional way. So like basically what I was asking is like, he seems to like, it, seems to like pause and get that nice, few seconds of, getting his close up for the camera before taking a bite. And I'm like, wouldn't she have to keep swimming to just keep breathing, or, I don't know, but,
well, it took off right afterwards. And,
yeah.
if you look at it in terms of something that
It's
moves
like a
so
pause. It
big,
did like a pause and strike.
Yeah, I guess
it
so.
was a
I just-
curiosity bite, like they say with sharks.
Yeah.
Sharks do
bites
that.
to
I think Jake
see what
might
it
know.
is.
Jake might know slightly more about sharks than me, but I think that was probably fine, like behavior-wise.
Dude,
I don't
I'm
think
a
it
big
was
Shark Week
completely
freak,
off.
and then because of Jaws and stuff scarring me so much as a kid. Honestly, dude, I cannot swim in the ocean. I
Well,
can't.
that
I
was
think
just
that
something that
falls
stuck
under-
out to me anyway.
I think that falls under, let's call it artistic license.
Creative freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was something I noticed, but then
It didn't seem to like stop completely. It seemed
Right.
to just like really slow down. Like it was
Yeah.
still very steadily approaching.
yeah, just
Well,
like
again,
a
when you look at
a
something
slight like approach pattern, almost like a helicopter kind of.
The
taking a
movement
slow-
of something so big seems
Yeah.
slow. I think.
Well, I think that
I
partially
think
would
that's-
depend on what kinds of gills it had. If it had like pumping gills or just like ram gills, which ram gills are where to move water through the gills. Like I might be misremembering. It's been a decade since I had the ichthyology course, but ram gills are the kinds of gills that they work just by the fish swims.
Right.
And like pump gills, like the fish actually like pumps water through the gills.
Right.
It looked like at least from when they had the one megalodon corpse on the deck, it looked like those gills could have been powerful enough to kind of pump some degree of water in. But I mean,
I don't think they're the same type of gills that doesn't. I think
They-
it's more likely that the force, check it, like of that big of an animal going against the thing, maybe like kicked back some fucking current, and it was able to like, because sharks, again, you got to translate that like long thing into like a split second thing for like a smaller shark,
Well, yeah, I was gonna say
Tried
like
you
that.
once,
Well,
they
and
all
also
knew.
like just the fact that the whole thing is so big, yeah, it probably got a decent amount of water in there already. But
Yeah.
but then another observation. This is more any shark film that I've watched, not just this one, but like you've noticed that in movie logic, anytime a shark appears, they're always hungry and they always want to go after whatever the main character is, even if or whatever character we're talking about, even if that character is considerably smaller than the shark. And I'm like, isn't that
and
a little?
dorsal fin always comes out of the water right
Yeah.
away.
Well, but like what I was thinking is like, isn't that a little bit like running a marathon just to get a crouton or finger food at the end? It's not even like like I could get it if it was going after like say the giant squid because that's like a decent meal. But then there are ones that like they'll go after like a really small animal or even like that dog towards the end. I'm like, would that? Yeah, it was like the dog.
That was pretty silly.
Yeah, well, but you know what I mean. It's like that thing is so tiny. It's like, would the shark even know that it swallowed it?
Might probably even like have it go
Well, it's like I've seen that in so many shark movies that I'm like,
Oh, Megalodon is so big. Something like that would be like incidental.
Exactly.
Well, they missed a lot of opportunities to have it like swallow an entire beach full of fucking like spring break kids or something.
Well, now see, like with Jaws,
I'd have it cruise up there and then like grind on the fucking edge of the beach like you see the killer whales do when they go for those seals, and then just fucking like take in all the kids as it goes along, and then go back out to sea. Like
with something like Jaws, like they kind of explained it because of the that was like its prime feeding season, and it was territoriality, and it was a lot of people making disturbances in the water, and and it only ever really got like one person at a time, and it didn't like pick. It wasn't like a vacuum, like just swallowing up anybody.
and with the Meg, they seem to make it attack a bunch of ships, which I guess makes some sense. But
you gotta remember too, in Jaws, the shark was near beaches, whereas here it was in the open ocean. So pretty much any activity was gonna attract it.
And that's fair. I just my larger
predatorily though.
My larger point is more so that generally speaking, with a lot of carnivorous animals, like if they're not hungry at that moment, and if you're not necessarily like an immediate threat, they don't necessarily have a reason to attack you, just from having seen you. It's just when you are posing a threat, or if you're easy prey, or if they're hungry or whatever, then they'll attack you. But like,
even the most mad-eating tiger or whatever the fuck isn't going to just be like human.
Yeah, they're not. They're
not doing that.
Yeah, now that's not to say you should be like the Tiger King and treat him like a house cat, but at the same time, it's like they are not like zombies where they'll just run at you just from having seen you necessarily.
I was talking in the wild, like with those dudes, their bush rifles. Like even those tigers aren't like killing every single fucking time they come across something.
But that's just a larger shark movie observation.
One thing that I actually thought was interesting in this movie is that this one does not seem to completely zone in on whoever as you said, whoever the main character, whoever the animal that you think it's going to go for or whatever. They give you some fake outs. That dog is a fake out, but you're right. But the a couple of the characters are eaten incidentally, like they're not even the target. The wall gets eaten when the shark is trying to eat the other shark. It's like it's not like he was targeted. So they did a pretty good job of that. And
one of my favorite scenes, by the way.
again, if you really want to get hung up on the science of this one, you could dissect it all night and probably find all kind of things. The one thing with that one scene of the shark looking dead on and then biting, that is probably the biggest fallacy I can think of, is that sharks do not have forward set eyes. They don't have telescopic vision. So if he's looking dead on, he's not going to see what so that would be the biggest thing. But that's, like I said, you could spend all night trying to
explain that.
It's for tension. It's like in that, it's like in Finding Nemo, good example, where the shark just comes upon him and just kind of sits there in space,
right?
And then tells them that it's that he's trying to go vegetarian,
right?
So, it's all about setting it up, and that is a very effective scare. When that little girl is looking head on at that shark, and it just slams down on that glass tubing. It's just it's for the effect. It's not for realism at that.
Yeah, well, and it's a great shot. Don't get me wrong, and it's a creepy idea. I just was curious, but like and I'm sure that they do this. But I was just curious. I have not seen, and this is a point in the movie's favor. I've not seen a lot of shark movies where sharks will eat their own kind, or
sharks will cannibalize pretty much
all the time.
I mean, that's what I figured. I figured they would, and that's why I was like, that's neat that they were showing that off, because not a lot of shark movies I can think of would do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that the normal sharks actually ate the second megalodon at the end.
Yeah,
that was an interesting climax.
Well, it was kind of like at the end of Jurassic Park when you see the pelicans flying over the water, because obviously obviously the birds are the natural descendants of the dinosaurs, as well as reptiles, but the point is they were able to escape the island, whereas the dinosaurs couldn't. So it was a good visual metaphor there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
So we've also got the.
I can get horrified.
Skipped around so much. I'm trying to figure out where we are with the play. I guess discovery of the shark. We find out. Oh, wait a minute. We are near some very, 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 very populous beaches. And I think this is the part where Morris...
You throw on your fucking suit with a bunch of badass anchors on it, and you say, keep those beaches open. Yeah, keep those fucking beaches open.
Yeah, be like the governor of Georgia, do something. Yeah, so Morris is saying that, I called everyone. I called the Chinese government. I called the Indonesian government, the Australian government. They all know this shark is out there. And then he sneaks off to be with some of his gang, and they try to blow up the shark before anyone finds out about it. And that's when we find out that Morris really is a little bit more of a douche than we thought he was. But he's at least, he's trying to take care of business.
I was gonna say, like, I don't think his reasoning is necessarily wrong, just because of the international shitstorm that would cause, plus and I still don't think he's necessarily totally above compassion for the people that are around him.
It was still kind of unwise, especially like his plan.
Definitely,
his plan was
definitely
very
unwise.
crummy too.
Yeah,
we're just gonna
definitely
find the
unwise.
tracker and drop some C4 on it, and it's like, don't you have access to better stuff than that?
You would hope so, yeah. It did seem a little bit It did seem a little bit like shooting from the hip, admittedly, but
He'd have been better off sending one of his goons down into the belly of the shark.
I'm gonna tell you right now, if I was a billionaire, I'm chucking that fucking Semtex from that helicopter. Yeah, like that's
And
why not?
Okay, and actually, I'm sorry, skip the part where I just talked about with the wall. So basically, we had they
Sorry.
go out and they try to poison a shark. They don't realize yet that there's more than one. And they go out and they decide to poison one. And this is where the cage comes in and where all this stuff comes in. And they're out on this big boat. And you've got basically, all your main characters. You got Jonas.
It does eventually work.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, that's kind of an amazing thing that this movie does.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of shark movies, there's remember there's the failed plot from Jaws. It's like, okay, we're going to fill this with cyanide and like stick it in its face.
Yeah.
And there are so many shark movies where they do something like that and it just doesn't work. But it actually does kill like the first megalodon. And it's like, huh.
Yeah, that was really refreshing. It's like, and they know that we've seen Jaws, and they know we've seen Jaws, and they know that we know that Richard Dreyfuss's plan didn't work, and it's nice to see it actually work in this film and on a much larger animal.
And still, though, you still get that Jaws reference of getting the shark, but not getting the shark. Because you have that scene where they got a tiger shark, and and in this one, a similar thing. They're looking at it, and it's like, that bite radius seems kind of small,
Yeah, it's big, but something's off.
And then you got the wall is playing in the water, and right then the big shark comes up, swallows him and the little shark, and tips their boat over.
So one of the differences in the book is they actually kill the first shark they encounter in the trench, and they're hauling the body up. And how the other shark makes it up is, so in the book, the sharks are mated pairs.
Yeah.
And in the book, since its mate is dead, the other shark starts feeding on the body. And as they are slowly raising it to the surface,
that's right.
So there's like a stream of hot blood that the shark kind of uses as a corridor to not freeze. They don't have the entire sulfuric thing is
that's way more metal than coming through some sulfuric vent. Coming up in this shower of blood.
It's kind of funny though. This your mate's dead and you're gonna get revenge, but you're also gonna feed on the body.
Sharks aren't exactly emotional.
Yeah, no, they're not romantic, but still, I just thought that was kind of funny.
Unless you're Jaws, then you seek revenge.
Oh yeah, seriously.
A plot point in the book is that the shark that does come up is pregnant, so. There are scenes where, from the shark's point of view, it's I need everything I can get, food wise. So that's why the shark is so. That's partially why the shark is so aggressive. Actually,
it makes sense.
The shark has its pups kind of near the end, so nobody has any idea that it was going to give birth, and it just kind of happens, and nobody knows about it.
It'd be good. That would have been a sick ending for this, actually.
Actually, that
give birth to him right on the shores of Japan.
A thing in the ending, actually.
It gives birth to him on the shores of Japan, and then you see an iguana walking over, so that it's going to be Godzilla versus Megalodon versus.
No, it needs to focus onto an island home. And Betty White exits out, and she starts feeding the baby sharks.
I wish I could fucking enlarge Betty White to kaiju size and then pilot her around. That'd be fucking amazing.
Oh god, she's never done a kaiju film, has she?
I don't think so.
Not a kaiju film, but she was in Lake Placid.
Oh, I know.
We could do her first kaiju film.
Why not?
Oh god.
Oh, speaking of kaiju films, something that I didn't get to say in the Mega Shark thing that we did was I actually saw when they were selling it was at the Echo Bridge version of Godzilla versus Biollante that they were selling, and they actually included as 2 free bonus movies, 30,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, and I'm like, yeah, those are totally on the same level as Godzilla versus Biollante.
All right.
I kind of want to get a copy of that because that's.
I'm sure there's shitty
Godzilla
transfers too, man.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And this
Okay.
this scene also featured one of the more insane parts, but it kind of fits with the whole idea that the shark might not be out to kill everything. And that was the part where Jason Statham actually gets in the water and swims out in order to poison it. Or Jonas, rather, gets out and starts swimming. And then you get a nice little Finding Nemo reference in there.
It's really
Yeah.
just an excuse for him to flex his abs in front
Yeah,
of a
that's
Chinese
great.
woman
Yeah.
and dive out there in a fucking,
I
you know,
think
like,
that's my favorite part, actually.
Yeah, that was a
it's pretty
cute.
awesome.
That was a cute reference, actually.
You too, and it was like, you're little obvious there. Again, a lot of the jokes easy.
Well,
Yeah.
they very much continue that sort of tradition of kaiju movies of having like the sexual tension that goes nowhere.
Well, I actually found that kind of refreshing because they were able to have some degree of an attraction, but they didn't like get in bed right away, which that always
Yeah.
bugs the crap
Yeah,
out
well,
of me at least because it's
and
like that is so not.
Regardless of how it played out in this one, that's always the fucking staple of kaiju movies. Is like
Yeah,
those
she's,
two people that have some sexual tension,
yeah, she's still.
but it's never
staple of
realized
budget
in this
movies.
film or in any subsequent series.
It's a staple of big budget films, regardless of type. The
I mean, I thought it was refreshing just because in a lot of like American just American productions they don't really have a lot of qualms about like jumping into bed immediately, and I'm thinking, well,
Yeah.
in real life, typically, at least for ones that last, relationships tend to proceed a little bit slower than that and more organically, and it seemed like they were taking it at a more reasonable pace.
And
Everybody's
then
different.
One thing, though, that I did find quite amusing and likable about the daughter was she's sitting there trying to play Cupid the whole time. It's like
Yeah.
it was kind of interesting.
Well, and not in a typical movie kid fashion, where they you've seen that in movies like Sleepless in Seattle and stuff, but this felt different.
Right. But along those lines, this scene also features, unfortunately, not eaten by the shark, but you see the mortally wounded Dr. Zhang, who doesn't quite make it back to the station. And that's, you get that little bit of pathos there. And then they start plotting. What's that?
Was he wounded? I didn't remember that he'd been hurt.
Oh yeah, he got badly
Yeah, he
hurt
was.
in battle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he got.
It was when
the doctor.
the
The other
yeah
doctor.
the second megalodon came up and
Right.
destroyed the boat and everything.
Right.
Which
I thought we were
super
talking
fast.
I thought we were talking about the doctor who sacrificed himself
Oh.
so that they could
No.
get away.
So
No.
yeah, and that was also was that in that sequence? That was the follow-up scene, wasn't it? Like after they went back out in the boat.
That was before they had gotten into the rafts.
Okay, which
Yeah.
that was when they went back out in the boat, right? I think that was. But yeah, so that one was where you see Heller after this encounter. I think it was the second one because I think it was after this first encounter that Heller finally goes up to Jonas and says, "All right, man, I owe you an apology." And that's kind of, comes right out and apologizes, which I understand that was a bit of a change originally too. I think Heller was a dick to the end in the book, right?
I can't actually remember if Heller was in the book.
But he
Because they
definitely,
This takes the premise of the book,
Right.
but it changes a hell of a lot.
So but yeah, in this one he does eventually, he eats some crow, he makes his apology, and then he gets a chance to actually have a level of redemption involving one of the characters we didn't mention, the engineer Jax, who's played by Ruby Rose. And they find themselves in a situation where they gotta get back to the boat, and he ends up sacrificing himself so she can, which was, so he kind of gets his Toshi moment. Actually, both of them kind of did the same sort of thing.
I like the shark cam during that sequence where the shark is like, she's over there, he's over there. All of a sudden, there's like a lot of commotion over there, and the shark's like, okay. Just
right. And okay, so you got I got some scenes skipped around. They go back in the boat to make things bad for the shark. And they manage, this is the part where it goes toward the beach, and they manage to get it away from the beach using recordings of whale songs, I believe.
Yeah.
And so they've got this idea where Suyin and Jonas are going to go after it using the glider subs that they have. And
the movie really picks up pace quite fast once the shark really appears and starts doing damage.
You get a lot of Jaws references in that
as it should,
part.
though, because a big shark like that isn't going to wait around,
like in the book, it kind of roamed the oceans for I think about like a week or so.
How about
It's kind of
wade around with the D.
The super fast thing with those ships that they get into to actually fight the megalodon. Did anybody else notice that they kind of looked like the Naboo starfighters from episode 1?
Yeah.
Actually, that's exactly what I was thinking. I thought it was like Star Wars from.
Well, but they did do their job of making undersea work look cool. So it's okay if it kind of references that visually a little bit.
Well, I was thinking that one of the beachgoers who was in the water, she was running around in a ball that floated on the water. That kind of reminded me of the Jurassic World crappy ball.
Well, and also you get some references. You get the reference to the Alex Kintner with the little boy begging his mom to go out in the water. You get the reference to the barrels with like all those floating islands, and the shark ends up hooking 1, 2, and then a third one. And that's kind of like he pulls the barrel.
One of my favorite parts.
And then, so you get a lot of little
fucking up those Taiwanese.
Or I think was it? I'm not quite sure where this actually took place. They should name the city, but I don't fully remember.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite bit after all of that happens and the shark leaves the beach was the fact that same kid. Well, not only does he live, but then he takes a bite of that popsicle, man.
Yeah.
He makes sure. He's like, yeah, you fucking eat that popsicle. You've earned it.
One thing, penny for that.
It's probably the best popsicle of his fucking life, too.
One thing about that scene was the shark, because it's PG-13, the shark kind of does a lot of its damage like off camera. So it's like you see it coming at people and then it like cuts away.
Right.
Which during this you see a lot of the limitations of the rating that they had. And
can you imagine the carnage like a rated R or NC-17?
I was hoping for more carnage. Like apparently they did shoot like the gore footage, but they just weren't able to like finish the effects because of the budget that it would take.
A lot of movies have suffered from that recently. One that I've been looking at is Cursed.
Oh, maybe they when they make the revenue back, maybe they'll stick it back in and extend
it is kind of set up a little bit for the sequel, which the sequel novel is The Trench, which involves going back to the trench, and there's more down there than just megalodons. There's prehistoric reptiles called mosasaurs. There are giant mosasaurs down there too, specifically chronosaurs. And so you get like Meg versus ocean lizard combat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. Well, it's a
That's
little
sort
bit
of-
like in Aquaman, you got to see those trench creatures, and well, that came out in the same year, and also Harry Gregson Williams did the score for that movie too. The score was actually pretty darn
Pretty good
good in
score.
Meg.
I
Yeah,
don't remember. Not a lot of it like stuck out to me, but it was one of those scores that just like complements the movie, but you don't.
Blends in.
It's not intrusive. You know what I mean?
See, that
Yeah,
would be
like-
cool.
his
That-
his score was really good in Aquaman too.
see,
Okay,
I use Dustin's
no,
quote all the time in my movies or like in my fucking reviews when I talk about score because it's true.
okay,
A good
I just-
score is like one that you can fucking remember, obviously, but like, you know, some scores are just meant to be there to be
Appreciate it.
complimentary to the shit, you know.
Yeah.
So you hear them, but you don't listen to them.
But back to the scene. One thing I noticed on this watch that I really appreciated was you get kind of a sense of the carnage we were supposed to be seeing when the shark like veers away from "Lured by the Whale" song. You can see in its teeth that it has a lot of swimsuits and like
Yeah.
inner tubes like stuck between its teeth. And it was like, ooh,
As one
so it
should.
actually did get a lot of people. Yikes.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to mention about that scene before we get away from it, we talked about the little kid. I'm looking here on the credits on IMDb, and Waggy is credited as Awesome Kid on Beach.
That's his character's name.
Yes,
Sure, why the fuck not?
I love it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so they get it away from the beach. They go after it in their little gliders. They kind of run out of ways to attack it pretty quickly. And so essentially, Suyin has to return to the surface, and Jonas keeps going at it. And this is where he has his "I'm going to be the badass hero" kind of moment, and goes straight at it and just guts it with I guess, a broken fin on the machine, or
Yeah.
There's
I thought
a
it was like
jagged,
debris.
there's like a jagged piece of metal like
Right.
sticking out of the submersible,
right.
and he just pilots the submersible straight at the shark and then turns and cuts like a big hole, a big like
Yeah.
slash right in it.
Which I'm so honestly, I can't believe I'm like praising all these little things about that makes it sound like I didn't like it. I loved it, but like I'm saying like all these little things that I'm noticing as I'm playing it back in my head. I was so glad that they thought about just very simply cutting it enough to let it bleed out. You know, it's like you don't have to do like a making the shark explode because of compressed air or things like that. It's like just simply make it bleed out because it's a living thing.
Well,
and
that's how
if
the shark actually died in Jaws, so it kind of tracks.
Oh, you mean in the
In
book
the novel,
or- yeah,
in the
yeah.
novel, the shark bleeds out because it's been like stabbed and barreled and bulleted.
Well, and
yeah.
also this one though, in the way they played it in the movie is perfectly logical. Sharks are known to be attracted to blood, and a 75-foot shark is going to contain a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
It's
it's fitting that the normal sized sharks, like the
Right.
modern day sharks, take down the ancient one.
The king of the sea, as it was called in the book.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're neglecting that Jason Statham literally challenged the megalodon to a knife fight.
Basically, yeah. But I just found that refreshing because it's such a simple thing, and it's like every other movie after Jaws was like, okay, we gotta emulate the blowing the shark up thing, and it was they got back to despite the shark being so massive, it's like they got back to basics and were like, oh wait, yeah, this thing isn't like a indestructible monster; it's an animal, and it can bleed out.
It's nice that they have that kind of like realistic touch. I mean, it can be a little bit. They found an exciting way to do it too, because in Jaws the book, like the shark is rushing at Brody, and Brody just kind of squeezes his eyes and is like, "Oh God, please just kill me fast." And then nothing happens, and it takes him like 60 seconds to have like the guts to open his eyes, and the shark is just floating there, like it goes belly up and sinks as much as the parents will allow it. And he's like, "Oh," he like
it's a little
reaches out and-
anticlimactic.
nothing.
Right. Well, overall, the movie had a better, or at least a more satisfying ending than the book did. Of course, in the book, I believe Hooper had been killed, and
Oh
he
yeah,
also,
the shark owns the shit out of Hooper in the book.
and he
Like,
also
it
was a
pulls him out of the
dick.
cage and like annihilates him.
Yeah.
Like they see the shark basically pops its head out of the water with Hooper's body like in its mouth and makes Brody and Quint like watch him crunch it.
Mhm.
It's pretty intense.
Mhm.
Right. So,
But in the book, in the Meg book, the shark is killed by Jonas pilots the sub inside it and chops his way out of it with a fossil shark tooth. Like it is insane. And honestly, I can see why they didn't do it here, because it would have been difficult to not make look ridiculous. Like in the book, it makes sense and it's really cool, but here it's just kind of no.
Well,
It's just like-
and Sharknado did it better because it had a chainsaw.
well, and it kind of makes me think of like Watchmen, with how people would probably have been like, "Wait, what is this ending?" If they had like
Yeah.
the true ending of Watchmen. You know, people who hadn't read the comic would have been.
Yeah, the comic had all that time and all that supplementary material to actually properly set up that ending, and whereas the movie you simply do not have time to do that.
Yeah, and that movie ran very long anyway. You know.
Oh yeah, well even the awful theatrical cut ran very long, and the good ultimate cut was like 3.5 hours, but like that really gave you the whole story as much as they could cram into a movie.
And with like the Black Freighter in there too, kind of
Yes,
like
exactly.
without introduction, it was a little much for people who didn't know what the point of the Black Freighter story was. Like, but anyway, digression aside, so the finale is pretty cool, and during the finale, there's sort of a setup for a sequel, I would say. Or it could be interpreted that way. So all the sharks, smelling the blood, like rush the dying megalodon and rip into it. And as the megalodon is sinking, a small shark like swims out of its mouth. And when it cuts back to the megalodon's body, there's not really an entry point like for a shark that size that I can see. And in the book, like as the shark is dying, like it has. In the book, the shark's pups are kind of followed after they kill it. One of them is caught and put in an aquarium, and I think the other one just escapes into the open ocean.
Oh, you know what? You made me remember possibly my favorite moment of the whole movie. Possibly. There were a lot of favorite moments, but this might possibly be my favorite. So, okay, the megalodon's dead, and the sharks are eating it, and Jason Statham is floating in the water. The hammerhead comes right at him, and you think, "Oh God, here he goes against the hammerhead." And then, they do the, the classic "come to save the day at the last minute" thing, with the
Oh yeah, and the other girl like just bonks it away with the other submersible.
and it's just so. I laughed out loud so hard because
sound effect too. Like,
but that's why it was so great, because it was like you think like it's so dramatic, but not only do they make it like a deliberate anticlimax, but the sound that they use is like a bug, but it's not even all that loud. It's just like such a like a throwaway sound, and it is like, oh my God, I laughed so hard, and I rewound it several times because I rewound it several times because I was just laughing my ass off. I was like, I don't know why, that just struck me so funny. And
So like the comic scene in Jurassic Park where he slips and falls.
yeah, kind of, yeah, but it's like possibly even more like the sound effect, like it actually sounds like it would have that sounds like what that body hitting that metal frame would have sounded like, and yet it still had that kind of cartoony, like bonk, kind of sound. I don't know why. That possibly was my favorite moment, just because it, like, they could have played it up as like the big climactic, da 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 kind of hero coming in to save the day kind of moment, and it serves that function, but like it comes across as such a like throwaway moment that it's so great.
There was another one a few moments before that when all the sharks swarm the megalodon. Like, a shark kind of veers towards Jason Statham, and then it kind of shakes its head like and goes right for the megalodon. It's like,
yeah, gotta have priorities.
comic relief. Well, it's the easier meal, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean,
how predators like that function.
yeah, in nature, they tend to go for the path of least resistance when it comes to a meal, for good reason, because they don't want to get killed themselves.
Getting injured is pretty bad for like a predatory animal, so they have to do a lot of risk assessment. Which is why a lot of sharks have eyes that roll back into their skulls, sort of for that reason, because their eyes are very sensitive. And so when there's a moment where he's able to like stab it in the eye. I was kind of like, wouldn't it have? Well, maybe not. Like, if it's only going after like squid. Squid do have sharp parts, but
well, I liked the fact that, well, he does stab in the eye, which is pretty gnarly, and then when the megalodon actually dies, I like that its eyes do roll back in its head, and it looks really creepy when it does that.
That was a nice touch.
Yeah.
I liked that, stabbing this massive creature in the eye didn't just automatically kill it like it would in probably a lesser movie.
Yeah, or a smaller shark, which it probably wouldn't even necessarily kill it fully there either, but, it certainly would have pissed it off.
There's a bad shark movie called, I think it's Shark Attack 2. For real, that's what they're called, man. Shark Attack 1, 2, 3. In Shark Attack 2, these two divers are, like, they're sisters, and they're just on a dive, and a shark like attacks one of them, and it just keeps like biting into the one sister while the other one is just like stabbing at it, and she stabs one of its eyes out, and it looks like it should be like fatal, but the shark is fine, and that's how they like identify that shark for the rest of the movie. Like, it gets captured by an aquarium, and she breaks into the aquarium with a gun.
All right.
I mean, on the one hand, you understand. On the other hand, it's not a good movie. The Meg is definitely a good shark movie. Like, if you like shark movies and you have some measure of taste, you should enjoy this movie. And if not, you're wrong.
Right. So before we, it's getting a little late here. We probably should make some time for special effects and for various production aspects. Does anyone have any lead-in comments on the effects or anything along those lines?
Looks
Their
beautiful as a movie.
effects were very good. I wish we had been able to get like the really nasty like gore stuff that this movie honestly really needed. I think that's kind of a point of disappointment for Steve Alton himself. Is that they couldn't really couldn't make it like a really like nasty horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, or they could have done like a unrated cut or something, like that would have been cool.
Yeah, apparently it would have just been too expensive to finish a lot of the effects.
And I can understand that. I mean, it's a little bit like, well, and obviously you have to think about the economics of a movie that big and everything. Like, it's like why there wasn't the hard R Venom movie, at least not to start off with. I guess the sequel is going to be that way, but it's like you have to think about like what all financially is at stake. And
Their shark is very good and very very not cheap looking. So I'm sure every scene that the shark is involved in cost an unbelievable amount of money, because their shark is very
sure.
And one of the big things that I think is worth noting, or has to be noted, is that a very, very large percentage of this film was either shot on or in the water. And that is definitely not an easy thing. It's definitely not a cheap thing to pull off. And actually, I saw in the interview, Jon Turteltaub was saying that he had never done a movie on the water before, and he learned a lot.
I should think so.
Right.
Well, I mean, at the very least, they had a lot more technological luxury than they had making Jaws, which was also filmed on the real ocean, and much to their regret, but it resulted in a great film. Very quickly, I don't know if anybody was watching the 4K disc that I was watching. You were watching
I
that?
have the steelbook. I'm
Okay,
good.
yeah, I have the steelbook too, but I don't know if anybody else noticed this. I don't know if it was this way in the theater, so I don't know if it was shot this way or if it was just the transfer or what. I noticed that on when it was playing back on my TV that a lot of the the highlights of the frame, let's say light reflected off of Jason Statham's head, that a lot of the highlights in the frame they could be really really bright and really kind of washed out, and
Movie. Like I didn't notice specifically that, but it had a very bright presentation.
yeah, which on the one hand, the overall picture quality was really really crisp, and that was nice. I mean that obviously more light in the camera, crisper picture, but I wasn't sure if it was just because they shot in bright natural Pacific Ocean daylight, or if it was something having to do with how it was transferred. But yeah, I did notice that there was a lot of kind of washing out of the highlights in the frame, and of it did give some people's skin tones a little bit of an uneven look. But again, that for all I know, that could just be a function of having shot in real Pacific Ocean daylight.
Heavy sunlight.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, the Pacific Ocean and the open ocean, specifically, it's you're getting bombarded with tons of light, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So
yeah, it's intense enough that a lot of animals that are open ocean like that have to have some kind of UV protection, extra. So,
oh yeah.
And
I mean, I would very readily chalk it up to just the natural lighting of shooting out in the open ocean, but it was just an observation.
Right. All right. Anyone else have anything else on those? On the effects? On the...
I was gonna say, I know we covered the music already.
We do get a moment where we see a severed arm, and you get kind of an idea of the sort of nastiness that this could have had, and it makes you want more. So they find those boats, those shark poacher boats that were destroyed by the Meg, which it seems like when I first saw this, I thought, oh, the only people the shark is going to get to kill are the main cast and people doing illegal things, but apparently not from that beach scene. So I thought the only kind of civilian casualties were going to be those shark fishermen. So I thought I was trying to make some kind of statement with that, but I was proven wrong.
Right.
Worth commenting on anyway.
Right. Okay. Well, in that case, we want to move into favorites.
Most definitely.
All right, Brandon, I guess you're ready to go, huh? What's your favorite?
I have actually two scenes. The obvious one for me was just the scene where the shark floats up to the little girl and takes that bite out of the glass. That is just, to me, it's an epic, frightening scene. But I also love when they first break through the surface of that thing into the deep trench and reveal that kind of underwater world. That's just amazing and bewildering at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. How about you, Mo?
Hey Mo, you there?
I think he might be asleep.
Okay. Okay. How about you, Dustin?
Well, as for favorites, the underwater world was a pretty cool sequence. I think I like the thing with the squid the most, where they introduce the shark in full. There was one thing I noticed, during the prologue, when we see Jason Statham's fateful decision to have to ditch those guys. One thing I didn't notice the first couple of times I saw this movie, but I did this time, was that you can see the shark get blown up in the explosion. Like, it's not very clear. It's kind of like just like a shape, but you see chunks of meat caught up in the explosion, and they are large.
Well, it's probably probably a third megalodon for all we know.
Well, for the species to survive, there would have to be several of them, so there are probably hundreds of megalodons down.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, food for them would be, woof, a challenge, to put it mildly. So they couldn't have like a huge population, but there would have to be a lot of them.
Yeah, and probably spread out pretty far, you know.
Yeah, worldwide in like those ocean trenches, especially if squid like what we see in that sequence are common down there, which a lot of evidence suggests that they are, just like the volume of giant squid beaks found in whales' stomachs. It's like they are. The worldwide population of big squid like that is well into the thousands, probably greater.
Yeah, just so damn deep.
I mean, like you can the stomach contents of one whale will have like 200 of those beaks, because the beaks don't digest very well, so it takes a while.
Yeah,
I guess my favorite for spots, and I can't really put it down to one because there are several favorites, is of course the jaw scene. That's a given, but moving forward, as I think I said before, I like that part where Jason Statham is singing "Let's keep swimming, let's keep swimming," and then of course,
The Dory. Yeah, I forgot about that.
when the mama comes and just eats the child. I mean, you don't expect.
Well,
that.
I mean, it's dead and it's dripping a lot of blood into the ocean.
Yeah.
So, and of course the beach scene after that, where they do that aerial scene, and all those tubes look like Cheerios to me. So,
Yeah.
as I was watching that scene with my fiance, I was like, "Hey, it's that new tropical brand of Cheerios."
Yeah, they use that shot in the marketing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good shot. Like I really do wish we'd gotten to see more carnage there. Think like Piranha 3D. Like I could imagine that scene going like that.
yeah. Piranha 3D had some awesome carnage, like
It
that.
did, but it was.
I mean, that's actually kind of
Piranha 3D
the
was-
opposite situation because they're normal piranha sized. There's just a lot of them, and they're hideously mutated or whatever.
Their explanation was they were like prehistoric or something. But I wish.
Yeah,
I wish we could have blended this movie a little bit. Like I wish we could have taken away maybe 15-20% from Piranha 3D, because it goes honestly kind of way too far in that big sequence, and just like give it to the Meg. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I loved how crazy the ending to Piranha 3D was.
Yeah. Enough of Piranha 3D. What's your favorite in this one?
Too much dick ripping like on camera for me.
Pretty much what?
Too much like dick ripping and like faces being pulled off. It's kinda like,
That, yeah.
oh, we were having a good time. We're not quite in the mood for this right now.
So, Dane, what's
Well,
your
I
favorite part?
was in the mood for that. Well, my favorite moment easily was at the very end with the hammerhead. I thought that was just so funny.
Okay. And is Kim still there? Did she want to give a favorite?
Let me see.
Hello,
Always checking.
man. Is everybody passed out?
No,
Well, I'm
that's
surprised I'm awake.
Oh my lord, we've been on for 2 hours. How
Yeah.
did we?
one.
What's it?
We're wrapping up. I promise.
All right.
We'll just move on.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and say I have trouble picking a clear favorite. I think that one scene with the shark and the girl is like the most visually arresting scene, probably. There were a lot of little moments I enjoyed. You know, there definitely a lot of little bits here and there. I'm not sure I can pick one that stands right out. But
I do have a question. What happened to the engineer lady? Because I looked away from the screen for a couple minutes and she was just suddenly gone.
I think she lived to the end.
She survived.
I think she did too. It's like I was looking for her on the boat at the end when they're all kind of like, "Yeah, we did it," and I didn't spot her.
Yeah, and we never did mention Mac, Cliff Curtis's character, and Statham's old buddy. He was fun. I believe he made it too. I believe at the end you had, let's see, you had Jonah, Suyin. Yeah, spoilers, by the way.
Oh, well, anybody who knows us knows we dunk into spoilers pretty hard.
Jonas, Suyin, I think Mac, Mei Ying, Jax, and DJ, I think were the ones still there. And Lori. I guess we're still the ones at the end. But
Elon Musk gets annihilated with his stupid whale plan.
Yeah.
Good fake out death there, and then he actually does get eaten right after that.
Right.
Which one super quick interjection. I noticed that. Did anyone notice that his ex-wife in the thing? She looks a lot like a younger Sharon Stone to me.
Yeah, I can't say I noticed, but I think so.
Yeah, she did. She did look a lot like that.
Okay.
So, we're ready to wrap it up. Are we ready to go to personal
Yes.
pros?
Yeah, I'll go first since I'm gonna get out of here.
Okay.
So I'm Dustin, also known as the Crypto Horrors. So I live here in Milwaukee and collect horror movie stuff whenever I go out, which isn't really happening anymore, apparently. So I show off my ridiculous collection on my YouTube channel, The Crypt of Horrors, and my Instagram, The Crypt of Horrors. I can sometimes be found on Twitter. We're working on rebranding as Cryptaxis, so I'm Der Cryptaxis on Twitter now. And yeah, come check out all the random stuff I do. So I have a Facebook page too, but honestly, I don't update it. So Apartment of Horror Inc. because I'm starting to not like the sound of Crypt of Horrors as much. It feels like I accidentally ripped it off of the movie Crypt.
Well,
So,
I'm going to go ahead after because I want to go ahead and sign off so I can.
yeah, I'm going to sign off now.
Yeah.
So, bye guys. This was great.
Well, and I'll go after you, Brandon, because I'll sign off too.
So I'm Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. We are all about that physical media stuff here on our channel. We like DVDs, Blu-rays, 4K, you name it. That's the kind of stuff we go over. We do video reviews, and we do various other top 10 lists. Of course, during the virus, we do, we try to do what we can in the meantime. I do have a couple of reviews coming out in the near future. I just did a request for Love Lab, which is an anime that is was requested by a viewer, and we have two others that are coming out, High 8 and High Death, which will be fun. They're great anthology films. Of course, if you haven't seen the interview we did with Evan Jacobs, I worked with Dave to put that together. That was really nice, and you can get that on his channel. Also, I help come up with the order and scheduling. So our next one coming up is going to be The Quest for Fire, which is a lovely Oscar-winning film, which I've never seen, but I can't wait to check out. And pre-show apparently is going to be the film Pathfinder for those of you who are interested in knowing that. Kim, did you have anything you wanted to say about yourself? Nope. Okay, moving on.
Okay. I'm Dane Kyle. I'm an independent writer, director, producer, and I've done a lot of segments for anthology feature films like For We Are Many and Clownsploitation and Creepypasta Deathnet and a bunch of other ones that are coming out, Faces of Fear, and been going through a lot lately and just recently got moved into a new place and trying to find another job amidst all this coronavirus nonsense and but trying to get back into the game of, well, podcasting like this, but then also going to try and do a YouTube channel devoted to Blu-ray collecting if I can, just because it's something I would enjoy, in addition to writing feature film scripts that I can hopefully sell in the near future. And so with that, I will say goodnight to everyone.
Good night.
Night.
All right, and I am Kodabuki Jake. I am frequently I help run Septum Sin versus the World. As he said, we are doing our best in these times to continue to put out good content, and hopefully you're having fun with that. And I continue to watch and collect and do what I can, and have fun on this channel as well. And that's really all I have to say tonight.
Yep. And my name is David Streggy. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, this channel that you are listening in on. And but I run it with most of this motley crew that slowly is disappearing and fading into the night. So but I also run a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I do video pickups and video reviews. Definitely check some of those out. I do have some newer reviews out there that are traveling the webosphere. And on a side note, I think sometime tomorrow, interview will appear of that I did with Joseph Kelly earlier today. So I'm not sure when that will appear, but I guess it will appear sometime. But in any case, definitely check some of the discussions that have gone on about. I just recently did some Larry Blameyer films. Pardon me. With my Croatian friend Boris. So check that out. We just recently did an interview, Brandon and I, with Eben Jacobs. So definitely check that out. And next week, like we said, we're going on with Quest for Fire, and before that, a film called Pathfinder. So definitely check that out next week, Tuesday. And we'll definitely have some more fun. So in any case, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. I would stay away from the ocean anytime soon. You never know what kind of creature is lurking within the darkest and deepest corners of the ocean.